Hi, my name is Asif Ramzan, and today we are going to discuss an important topic, that is revolt of 1857. Now, our forts that we see in our country in different parts, the rivers that we see, and the roads that we walk on. In fact, our ancestors all have been affected by it. Our roads have witnessed it. you know Something that influences our roots must be something we must show interest in studying. Fine, let's go back 150 years ago and let's try to see what actually happened during revolt of 1857, why it happened, and how it affected our ancestors and how it affected our nation. So before proceeding, I will give you overview of today's lecture. Firstly, I'll introduce the lecture. I'll introduce the revolt of 1857 briefly, and after that, I'll talk about the trigger factors. That is what bursted the balloon. And after that, we'll talk about the beginning of the revolt, and then we'll talk about the reasons of the revolt, religious reasons, economic reasons, and all the reasons. Then we'll talk about the sequence of happenings, what happened, where it started, where it reached. After that, we will talk about the leadership, and after we finish the leadership, I'll talk about the significance of the revolt of 1857 to the national movement and to the nation and to the people of the nation. And after that, we'll talk about the nature of the revolt, because there are different opinions about the revolt of 1857. Then there are books written by different authors, and I'll write names of the few because it becomes important. Questions are asked in the prelims. Then after that, we'll talk of how the revolt was suppressed, and we'll talk of the failure, the reasons for failure. And after that, we'll talk about the consequences of the revolt of 1857. And at the end, I'll give you an idea of how questions are asked in the mains today, because the UPSC it asks the unexpected question. No matter how hard you prepare, unless and until you involve yourself in the thought process, unless and until you start feeling about a topic, unless and until you start thinking from the different perspectives, it is not going to help you. So I'll give you an idea of how questions are framed and asked in the examination at the end of the topic. Fine. Okay. Revolt of 1857, if I'm to tell you simply what it is, it was a massive armed uprising against East India Company, and it was something that shook foundations of the very strong East India Company. Now, important thing is that something like this had never happened in India. It was something unprecedented, and it was first massive nationalistic challenge to the East India Company. Okay, so it was a massive uprising. Now, we will come to trigger factor, what actually triggered it. Usually when questions are asked in the mains that what are the reasons, usually we have seen that the candidates, they revolve around the trigger factors, and then they claim at the end of the day that we didn't score well. But the reason is that they don't understand the question. Okay, now I have tried to simplify the things. I have tried to take the trigger factors apart from the reasons so that we can have a proper understanding, so that we can understand this properly. Now, what is trigger factor here? Well, actually, what I mean to say is that something was boiling from ages. Okay, and there was a trigger which pricked the balloon and it bursted. Now, what was the trigger factor? Like we have here, introduction of the Enfield rifles. As a part of the modernization, the East India Company, it introduced Enfield rifles. Now, the thing with Enfield rifle is that its cartridges were to be bitten before use. As you can see here, the soldier is biting the cartridge before using it. And there was a rumor that the cartridges were greased with pork and beef fat, so it hurt religious sentiments of the soldiers. Also, there was a rumor that bone dust was being added to the flour, and then chapatis served to the sepoys. So it hurt the religious sensitivities and religious feelings of the people. Now, it was only a trigger. Okay, it triggered, it bursted the balloon. Something was actually happening from years. No, now let's try to understand what actually were the reasons. Okay. Before it, we will come to the beginning of the revolt. How revolt actually started? Revolt started, there was a mutiny which started at Meerut on the 10th of the May. After spoils, they refused to use Enfield rifles because, as I've just told you, that Enfield rifles had there was some people claimed that it contained beef and pork fat that was used to grease the cartridge, because greasing is important when it comes to cartridges. Now, was it something that happened first? No, something had earlier happened. As I have mentioned here, earlier rumblings were witnessed in the March 1957 when Mangal Pandey, the famous movie Mangal Pandey, you remember it, Amir Khan played the role of Mangal Pandey. Now, when Mangal Pandey killed two British officers and Indian soldiers present on the scene, they refused to arrest the Mangal Pandey. They refused to obey the orders of their seniors. The unit was disbanded. Okay, so mutiny, though it started at Meerut, but something earlier had happened too. Now, if question is asking the prelims, you must know it. If question is asking the mains, you must know it. Something was happening earlier. Now we'll come to reasons, because reasons was something, which didn't happen overnight. It was happening from years. Now let's try to analyze the reasons. Firstly, reasons for revolt. Firstly, let's talk about the religious reasons, because we have to be very specific when we are writing an answer. Once we divide it into religious reasons, economic reasons, socio-cultural reasons, and all that, so the answer, it becomes very presentable. Fine. Now coming to the revolt, what happened actually, religious sentiments were hurt because tax was levied on the properties held by temples and mosques, because religion is something dear to Indians. Okay, now when religious sentiments are hurt, come on, you're leaving taxes on the properties held by holy temples and mosques. How is this happening? I mean, how can you allow that to happen? So religious sentiments of the people, they were hurt. Fine. Then coming to second thing, which is General Services Enlistment Act. General Service Enlistment Act, though it was a military reason, but it had its impact on the religious factors, because as per the General Services Enlistment Act, a soldier was supposed to serve anywhere in the world. Now, what was the problem with this? That there were some Brahmin soldiers, for them crossing a sea, it meant losing a caste, because they were not able to maintain those caste stipulations once they crossed the sea. So General Service Enlistment Act, again, it was something which hurt the religious feelings of the people. Then there was Religious Disabilities Act, that's Laxi Loki Act. As per this act, that once someone, if he is Hindu or Muslim, or he belongs to any other religion, if he converts to Christianity, he can inherit the property of his father. So it was seen as a sinister design by Orthodox Muslims and Hindus. It was seen as a sinister design to convert people to Christianity. Then there were rumors were that some people, some officers of the East India Company, they have been tasked to convert the people to Christianity. Again, the religion, the Hinduism, Islam, and the religions, the native to the soil of India, they were being looked upon. There was a diatribe against those religions. The missionaries, they will speak some things which were very insulting to these religions. They were trying to insult the religion. So these religious factors, they created sort of resentment. They made people feel that East India Company here is to convert the people. So once religious sentiments are hurt, it leads to trouble, because as Karl Marx has rightly said, that religion is opiate of the masses. So now after religious reasons, we come to military reasons. Firstly, Post Office Act 1854. It may be important in the prelims, question may be asked. Now, as so far, before 1854, what was the rule? That the free postage, it was a privilege given to the sepoys, that they could post letters or whatever, they could post it free. But as per the Post Office Act, now they had to pay for this. So it created sort of resentment. I mean, people were not happy. They were working for the East India Company, and again, in spite of that, they had to pay for the postage. It created sort of resentment. The soldiers were unhappy, and it was a small, trivial reason, but something bigger. It was that the Indians, they were paid very less compared to the British soldiers. You are on the same rank and as the British soldier, and he is paid much more than you are paid. So it creates problems. You are not happy with the salary, you are demotivated. Then in the matters of promotion and privileges, Indian soldiers were discriminated. The 47th Regiment, it was ordered to serve in Burma. As I've already told you, there were some Brahmin soldiers, and for them crossing sea meant losing caste. Imprisonment followed, but the leaders, they were hanged, they were mercilessly killed. So these reasons, it led to some feeling in the minds of the soldiers, and they were not happy with the East India Company. They were, you know, they were unhappy, and they were ready to go against the East India Company anytime. And after that, political reasons, infamous doctrine of lapse, it was used to annex Jaipur, Sambalpur, Nagpur. What was doctrine of lapse? It was Dalhousie's doctrine. As per this doctrine, the princely states under the paramountcy of the British, what if the kings left no male heir, or the king was it was actually claimed that the king is not efficient enough to carry on the administration. So British would, on these excuses, British would annex the territories. So it became a political reason, and the people whose territories were annexed, they were unhappy with the British. And Awadh, it was annexed on the pretext of the misgovernance. I mean, when they couldn't fit it into the doctrine of lapse, they came up with something else. Okay, there's misgovernance, so we will annex the Awadh. What was important in this case was that most of the soldiers who were serving in the East India Company, they belonged to Awadh, and their families, they were from the families of the farmers. When their families are not happy, their families are suffering, how can soldiers be happy? And then Nana Sahib, will later on get to know who Nana Sahib is. He was refused pension. I mean, he was refused pension. The British stopped pension, so it led to resentment and feeling in the minds of others that tomorrow Nana Sahib's pension was refused. Tomorrow's mine will be refused. So it led to the political resentment, and people were again unhappy. Then there were economic reasons. Firstly, heavy taxation. Heavy taxation, more than what people could afford to pay. Then there was destruction of the traditional handicrafts and Indian industries. Reason being that the East India Company, it would take the raw materials to the Britain. Then there was technology there. They would come up with the finished goods, and there was huge demand for those goods in the Indian markets. Indian rulers would prefer those goods. So it led to destruction of the Indian handicrafts. As per some of the historians, they believe that we cannot put blame squarely on the shoulders of the East India Company, because the reason there being that no Indian merchant ever tried to find new markets. Like Britishers, they came from far away lands to find the market for their products, but this didn't happen with the Indian merchants. They never looked for the markets anywhere in any other countries. Fine. So these were the economic reasons. Then socio-religious reasons. Though there was something good about the socio-religious reforms brought about by the British, but again it hurt the sentiments of the orthodox religious people. Like abolition of sati, though it was a good act, but it was seen as an attack on the religion. And legalization of widow remarriage act, it was again seen as an attack on the religion by Orthodox Hindus. So all these socio-religious reasons, these economic reasons, then political reasons, then military reasons, these led to sort of resentment. People were not happy with the East India Company, and it led to trouble. And then trigger was the greased cartridge issue, and it led to the revolt. Fine. Now let's look at the sequence of the happenings. What actually happened, where it happened. Now try to imagine that the soldiers are marching from Meerut, then they enter Delhi, then they meet then they enter Red Fort. Fine. Try to imagine this and feel how interesting it is to get to know something which happened 150 years ago, and something which is recorded in the books of history, and we are reading as if we are seeing it. Fine. Now, sequence of happenings. Sepoys, after the fiasco at the Meerut, after they killed the British officers, they left Meerut, they reached Red Fort and appealed to Bahadur Shah Zafar and proclaimed him as Shahanshah Hindustan. Important from prelims point of view that who was proclaimed as Shahanshah Hindustan. Though Bahadur Shah Zafar, it is said that he was a weak ruler and he vacillated. He wasn't sure about the intentions of the soldiers, but he had to yield to the clamor and he accepted. Okay, fine. And he was proclaimed as Shahanshah Hindustan. Within months, revolts spread to Kanpur, Allahabad, Lucknow, Bareilly, and many other places. Rebels, rebels, they turned to traditional rulers because there was no single charismatic ruler who could bind them, who could tell them that we will do this thing or we would do that thing. Now, because of absence of these leaders, they turned to traditional rulers like Nana Sahib in Kanpur, Begum Hazrat Mahal in Lucknow, Khan Bahadur Khan in Bareilly, and Kumar Singh in Bihar. Kumar Singh, he was the oldest fighter, he was the oldest leader in the revolt of 1857, and most outstanding leader was Rani Lakshmi Bai. Her respected name was Madhu Karnika. She was outstanding leader, and the soldier and the officer who defeated her, he had a lot to say about her in her praise. Fine. After that, what happened? The letters were addressed to many states requesting for their support. They came from Meerut, then the revolt spread, and then letters are being addressed to many states, and they are requested for the help. And court of administrators with 10 members were set in Delhi. It is where the decisions of the administration were taken. Okay, now it was kind of constitutional democracy. Fine. After that, we can something that happened and that led to trouble was that unfortunately Indian rulers, merchants, they didn't support the rebels, they didn't support their own people, they supported British, and even prayer meetings were held for the Britishers. Revolt was suppressed in 1857, fine, and when you don't support your own people, it leads to problem. It leads to kind of demotivation. People are not happy. Not only not only around half of the soldiers, Indian soldiers, not only they didn't fight against the British, but they fought against their own people. So it was one of the reasons for the failure. Now let's talk about the leadership in brief. As I've just told you, that rebels turned to the traditional leaders. In Kanpur, it was Nana Sahab. In Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal. In Bareilly, Khan Bahadur Khan, Rani Lakshmi Bai, as I've just said. And in Delhi, Bahadur Shah Zafar. But real command was in the hands of General Bakht Khan. It is again important from prelims point of view. He was the nerve center of the power. He was the real person who was executing things, he was planning things, and this was the real center of the power, that is General Bakht Khan and his people, and some of around 10 people. So as I've just said, there were religious reasons, there were trigger factors, there were socio-cultural reasons. Now let's look at the significance of the revolt of 1857. First thing, that is Hindu-Muslim unity. There was unity between the soldiers. Soldiers fought together as a team. There was no communal tinge that he is Hindu, I am not Hindu, he is Muslim, I am not Muslim. These trivial things, these narrow-minded things, they were not present. They fought as a team. So it was something which we can say it was something significant. It was unprecedented and led to change in the British administration. As I've already told you, that something like this had never happened. It had never happened on Indian soil. So it is one of the points that we can write under the significance. Then it awakened the Indian masses. It created that feeling of the patriotism. It let people feel that yes, we can do it. We can free our nation from the clutches. Fine. After significance, we will come to the nature of the revolt. One important thing, if question is asked about the nature of the revolt, there's no hard and fast rule. If you believe that it was, for example, national struggle or war of independence, you have to justify it. If you believe it was not national struggle or it was not a war of independence, you have to justify it. There are no straight answers. Right? You just need to justify whatever you believe in, and if question like this is asked, you have to write some quotes of the people who have written books about it. Let's talk about briefly about the nature of the revolt. Sayyid Ahmad Khan and Munshi Jivan Lal, they believed it was a sepoy mutiny. Then national struggle or the war of independence, Karl Marx and V.D. Savarkar, they believed it was national struggle and war of independence. And some people like Outram and Taylor, they were the British writers who believed it was Hindu-Muslim conspiracy against Christianity. Now there are different opinions. If you believe it was Hindu-Muslim conspiracy against Christianity, then you have to, for example, quote Outram and Taylor. You have to quote their quotes in the answers, and then you have to justify it why you believe this. If you believe it was national struggle, you have to quote the Karl Marx, and it will help you scope better. Fine. So after nature of the revolt, we'll come to the books important from the prelims point of view, because UPSC is very unpredictable. Okay, first War of Independence by Karl Marx. You know, most of the people, they don't know that Karl Marx ever wrote a book on revolt of 1857. Now it is the book written by the Karl Marx, that is the first Indian War of Independence. From prelims point of view, it becomes important. You must remember that Karl Marx also wrote about the revolt of 1857 in India. Then Asbabe Bhagavate Hind, that is the reasons. If you translate it in English, it means reasons for the revolt. It was written by Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan. Then Indian War of Independence, it was written by Savarkar. An important, very rare document, that is Azamgarh Proclamation. It was probably written by Firoz Shah. Why probably? Because historians are not sure who wrote Azamgarh Proclamation. So Azamgarh Proclamation, it was kind of a manifesto of the rebels, their plans, how they will do it. It's a document which tells us a lot about how they planned things. Fine. Okay. After this, we will come to the suppression. How the revolt was suppressed. You know, revolt was suppressed after tough resistance. The British officers, they killed people, they killed soldiers, they killed spies. They suppressed the resistance with heavy hand. Delhi was captured on September 20, 1857. Nana Sahib, one of the leaders who fought against the British, he was defeated at Kanpur, and Tatia Top was executed. Rani Lakshmi Bai died fighting. She was a woman, she was a lady, and she died fighting like a hero in 1958. And about her, the Hugros, the British army officer who fought against her, he told that she was the only man among us, the rebels. You know, kind of respect that British army officer gave to Rani Lakshmi Bai. Rani Lakshmi Bai was, you know, she fought very bravely, and her name is written in the golden words in the Indian history. And by the end of 1958, British authority was restored. The rebellion was over. It was suppressed heavily. Now, you know, important question from the prelims as well as from mains point of view. Failure. Why did revolt of 1857 fail? Fine. You know, there was no coordination. Someone was fighting in Bihar, someone was fighting in Meerut. There was no coordination among us, the units. There was no communication among us, the units. Actually, there was no strong leadership, and that is why, you know, once for example, there were soldiers, sepoys in the Meerut. Once they were attacked by the Britishers, the others couldn't come for their rescue because they were not aware of what's happening. There was no coordination. There were no coordination as per. There was no planning. There was no single charismatic ruler who could bind them with the same rope. And then breakwaters of storm, as I have written here, Canning called them breakwaters of storm. Who were called breakwaters of storm? It was Scindia of Gwalior, Holkar of Indore, Nizam of Hyderabad, and Punjabis. They supported British. They didn't support spies. They didn't support their own people. They supported British, and they were called breakwaters of storm. They helped British, and they helped British to crush the rebellion. And you know, the Canning, he called them breakwaters of storm because they were people who not only fought against their own people, but they betrayed their own people for the British, because they were hopeful that in the future British may give them concessions, which remained a distant dream, which never actually happened. After this, there was the educated class didn't support. There were many reasons. Some of the reasons, like educated class, they were not sure about the intentions of the sepoys. They were not sure what they'll do with us. They had different intentions also. Some of them were they were looking for the careers, and had the rule of British ended, maybe it would have affected their career. So educated class didn't support them. The modern weaponry, it was not in the hands of the Indian sepoys. The Indian sepoys, remember, they were fighting with swords and spears against the Enfield rifles, against the artillery of the British. So modern weaponry, it was in the hands of the British. So weapons, they make a hell lot of difference when in the war. There was no communication like British telegraph. Once something British had to Britishers had to plan something, they would send telegraphs to the different locations, and they would coordinate. And something like this, that like telegraph, it was not in the hands of the Indians. It gave Britishers an upper hand to deal with the situation. Again, no effective military leadership like in EIC. EIC had the army officers who had fought in different parts of the world. In case of the Indian sepoys, there was no strong military leadership, so it led to failure also. About half of Indian soldiers fought against their own people. Again, these are the reasons that led to failure of the revolt of 1857. And some parts of the India, they didn't even revolt, they didn't participate in revolt. Punjab was hardly affected, Madras was not affected at all. So some people were against the British, others were okay, fine with it. There were people who were double-minded, looking for the side which had an upper hand, and they would then join the side that had upper hand. So it led to the failure of the revolt of 1857. Now, consequences. What happened after the revolt of 1857? Consequences like Queen's Proclamation 1958. It was announced by Canning. It was not announced by Queen. Question may be asked in the prelims. It was announced by Canning in Allahabad, and it ended rule of EIC. Now, it ended rule of East India Company, because East Indian Company, the officers, they were corrupt, and there was some people in the Britain who were against the East India Company as well. Now, the administration of India, it was now the direct responsibility of the Crown. It created a position was created of Secretary of State, who was a member of the British cabinet, and who would look at the administration and control even the minutest details, minutest things in the India. Viceroy Governor General was given title of Viceroy now. Okay, and the Canning was first Viceroy, and this may be asked in the state civil services. Era of annexations, it ended. Era of annexations ended, though most of the things that were announced, they remained on the paper, but the Britishers, they carried on the administration the way they wanted. This was all on the paper, just to pacify the situation, just to allay some ghost. That is it. Army was reorganized, very important. Some weapons that have the strategic importance, they were placed in the hands of Britishers, not in the hands of the Indians. And at strategic locations, again, Britishers were present, and the ratio was maintained so that if the Britishers, if the Indian soldiers, if the Indian sepoys, they revolt again, they can be suppressed very easily. Fine. Now, as I have completed here, there may be some questions asked, like the UPSC asks different questions nowadays. As far as the mains is concerned, they will not ask you a question which you contemplated. This may be asked and this may be asked. In the state civil services, those simple questions are asked, like reasons, consequences, trigger factors, simple reasons. But as far as UPSC is concerned, they may ask you a question like. Had the leader of the Gandhiji's caliber been present during the revolt of 1857, what could have been the course of the history? This could be the question asked of the UPSC. Or UPSC can ask the question like, had all the rulers and all the Indians supported sepoys, what would have been the course of the Indian history? Or they may tell you to comment on something like this. Okay, they may write as UPSC would write as a sentence and then ask you comment on it, that for example, the Sepoy mutiny, it was just a mutiny and nothing else. Fine. They may ask you different questions, not the orthodox questions you expect. So you have to think in a different way. You have to be ready for these questions. Once you open your mind, you will be ready for these questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.